There's not been a gathering like this in our lifetime. Hey guys, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank. We've got something special today. I actually had no plans for this. I just randomly was reading an old Fantagraphics comic, and I found this 5-part story, Legend of the Chaos God. So this is the first story of its kind. Actually, there won't be another one afterwards. The closest we'll get will be in DuckTales 2017, and that will not come close to this, or actually is well integrated, I think. But anyway, so this is Legends of the Chaos God, and this is a 5-part interconnected story between the Disney Afternoon's 5 biggest hits: TaleSpin, Rescue Rangers, Goof Troop, DuckTales, Darkwing Duck. There we go. It's going to be insane. It's going to be great. It's going to be huge, amazing. We'll do things that have never been done before. But anyway, so the premise of this story was in 1994, word came down from on high for the Disney Afternoon magazine that they wanted something serialized to sort of cover all five properties, which were riding high. Like this was the pinnacle. Like there was a point where the Disney Afternoon was the standard. But the question is, how do you do it? Because each of these series have their own different universes, histories, continuities. So how do you do it? And it was sort of an unspoken rule that these stories are entirely separate. Like these franchises entirely separate. It won't be until Darkwing Duck that we'll see cameos of other characters, as well as flat out Launchpad and Gizmo Duck. So yeah, there's some fun premises here. But anyway, let's get into it. Our first part is TaleSpin, Legend of the Chaos God, Crystal Chaos. So this story starts off with Baloo, Molly, and Kit on the way to meet Professor Potsherd on the island Rack-and-Rooney, because of course it is. And they're here to deliver supplies for Professor Potsherd, who is trying to who's uncovering artifacts from this ancient civilization, the Temple of the Dumb and Glum. These names were a bit much. So anyway, everything seems alright until the pirates show up. And who leads these pirates? None other than the legendary, the infamous, the dangerous Don Carnage. But luckily, even Don Carnage cannot stop the legendary Baloo, alright? So Baloo's able to work his magic as only a pilot of his caliber can, but in the process, a ruby, or a gem, they don't really actually say it's a ruby, but anyway, and one of the artifacts breaks off, it's a ruby, and it falls into a barrel. And so, Professor Potsherd meets up with Baloo and Professor Potsherd's son, and they talk about exactly what he's looking for. And so Professor Potsherd is trying to prove that the legendary Chaos God really existed, and that he destroyed the Rack-and-Roon civilization hundreds of years ago. So I'm like, okay. Molly makes a joke that her mom, Rebecca, says, doesn't need any chaos when she's got Baloo. And, so they get the stuff loaded, and everything is fine until later, when Molly goes through everything, figure out exactly what the professor needs later, she comes across it, and that's when the story really begins. So, she becomes possessed by this god of chaos, alright? Soligo, and it now takes over Rebecca's body, and it's just entirely different. I imagine his voice sort of like that nice little echo, "Who interrupts me?" And Molly's freaking out. She's going to figure out what gets Baloo and Kit, and Rebecca takes off into Sea Duck, which is kind of crazy because Rebecca's piloting skills are sort of inconsistent. There was an episode where she did try to be the default pilot for the Sea Duck for Hire. It was kind of an emotional thing. It actually brought Rebecca to tears when Baloo had to let her know, look, you are not a pilot. But whatever. So anyway, Baloo and company, they go in. This is all a very short, fast-paced story, and that's what I love about it. So they go in, they get hold of the Sea Duck, they try to get to Rebecca, as in Rebecca's sight, she's just fighting for control here. So what's interesting about this is one could imply that while the Soligo can take over, there's still a part of them that is still there. In other words, he's not fully taking over, he's sort of like force his way into the driver's seat, but it doesn't have a full hold, because whenever Molly's in trouble, Rebecca's able to sort of push herself out. So there's a nice little push for her to keep going, and so she's able to help get Baloo and company back into the Sea Duck, where they're able to get the ruby off of her. So the question is now, what do we do with the ruby? So they decide, like, you know what, we can't give it back to the professor because this ain't insane, so they drop it into the bottom of the ocean. Not the best idea per se, but I think it's solid. It gets the job done, which is get this thing away. So we should be done. Honestly, this first part I think was very straightforward, very honest about what's going on here, and I like that. There's not a lot of intrigue to it. There's not a lot of complex moments. This is apparently the last time we'll see a full Tailspin story in the Disney Adventures magazine. So it is a bit sad in some ways, but I think if you had to go, I think it's appropriate that it's in a story that, you know, continues the legacy of the Disney Afternoon theme. Next, we have the Rescue Rangers, to have and half not. So, this story here reveals that at some point the Chaos Gem was uncovered, and a fish spit it out, and it was found by fishermen. Fishermen brought it to the museum. And so, what's going on here? So it's at the museum, and Solgaleo seems to think this is the best place for him to be, primarily because he probably remembers the professor talking about it. But I'm going to the museum, and luckily he does find the jade structure where where the medallion and the ruby were held. So, at the same time, though, it turns out Fat Cat and his cronies are trying to steal it, or trying to steal whatever that is, and the Rescue Rangers heard about this, so they are now using this time to investigate, try to protect it, and make sure Fat Cat and his cronies don't get it. Luckily, Fat Cat and his cronies are pretty smart, are pretty clever, but Gadget is 1,000 times smarter. She's able to set off the fire alarms to stop them from stealing it, but lo and behold, in the scuffle, Gadget lands on that gem, along with Fat Cat, and they feel exactly the presence of Solgaleo, and they're like, oh my god, what is this? What is this? And so, a scuffle matches with those two, they get away from it, but then, as Gadget tries to warn them about it, Dale ends up touching the gem, and he becomes possessed, and Solgaleo seems to be very fed up with, okay, you know what, I'm tired of this falling out, I'm going to strap it to my back. Alright, let's go. He goes off trying to find the medallion, so apparently he needs both pieces to unleash his full power. And I think with Dale's voice, it sounds dark, but also just a little, also hilarious at the same time. Like, it's just a little lower. But I can't do a chipmunk voice. So anyway, Fat Cat's like, okay, so we should probably get it. We'll just use this. But the scuffle now entails with Dale trying to get to Fat Cat, and the rescuer trying to get to Dale to separate everything. So even Fat Cat's like, you know what? I happen to be a great fan of destruction, but even he seems to realize, you know, this isn't something we want. At the same time, he's like, you know what? I can probably get something for it. So, in the scuffle, Fat Cat ends up getting it, and he's able to, with the medallion and the gem, he's like, yes, we're in, but lo and behold, Fat Cat gets electrocuted, so both pieces are separated. So, what happens now is the Rescue Rangers get their two Raven friends, Edgar and Alan, because, of course, where's Poe? Have them take it to opposite ends and drop it off there. And both Dale and Gadget hoping that, you know what? They won't see it again. They hope that, you know, those two pieces will never see the light of day again. And that's how it ends. This is also apparently the last time we'll see the Rescue Rangers 2 have a full story in the Disney Afternoon magazine. So, again, it's a fun farewell, but, you know, I think had they known it, they probably would have gone a bit bigger. We probably would have seen Professor Nimnol. We probably would have seen more from Monterey Jack. Like, Monterey Jack and the entire Rescue Rangers crew are there. But this story really is overthrown by the gem. I think had this been like allowed to be a bigger epic, we probably would have seen some more. But really, we're just seeing the gem go from one story to the next, and it almost sort of pollutes them. It's really kind of sad in some ways. Next is, well, it ends up with the Goof Troop. Spookus Ex Machina is this story here. So, what happened? Well, the crow, or the raven, dropped it. It ended up in the grill of a car. Alright, this car happened to be the car purchased by none other than Pete. Pete making a rather extravagant purchase that he hasn't told Peg about, and this car it's the real deal. Like, this car can clean itself already, worth it. It has mechanical hands, it's as smart as a computer, so everyone's kind of excited about this. The only person who's not too excited about it is Goofy, primarily because Goofy senses something off about it. He sees the car sort of flare up with the red energy and electricity. He's a bit off-put by it. And even when Peg and Pete go off and they drive off in it and it seems safe, Goofy is still not too comfortable around that car. Then we cut to that night where it turns out the car is stuck in there, stuck with the engine, and he points out how amazing this technology, like this is amazing. He uses basically the USB port in the car to connect to the TV to figure out, hey, where is the medallion? And he hacks Goofy's TV, and it turns out he has the medallion was found by Scrooge McDuck, and he's donated to the DuckTales Museum. Now, if not for the DuckTales movie, I would say I don't see Scrooge donating anything to the museum, except for the fact he'll get a hefty tax break. In other words, it's still his, but you get to borrow it for a bit. So anyway, Solar Ghost is like, I must get to Duckburg. The fools! Maybe he'd have like a Maleficent, not Maleficent, yeah, maybe like Maleficent, but a bit more ghostly. I want to hear him say, fools! There we are. So anyway, he's realized he has to get to Duckburg, but then Goofy finds out the car is alive. He goes to warn Pete, and the car just all of a sudden gets aggressive. We've seen this sort of horror story before, and it is kind of funny. Pete doesn't believe it at first until he sees it. He's like, we can't tell Peg that I bought a demon car, alright? So let's just go out there and figure out what to do. So Goofy being Goofy, like, what, let's get some garlic, some not holy water, but water, some salts, some silver bullets. All I've got is some quarters, and then let's drive a stake through it. Pete's like, this is still my car, Goofy, please don't. The car's had enough. He grabs like, look, put the key in the ignition, fools! Yeah, fools is what he has to say. I love that. So anyway, so it goes in, they drive off. Goofy's like, you know what, I ain't having this. Which he steers the car off the cliff like, Pete, we gotta jump. And they go, and they hope it's done. But Solar Ghost is not done yet. It's like, oh, I'm all banged up. I gotta find some way. So I'm like, wait, technology got me killed, but it'll save me. So he's able to call the Spoonerville Town Service, and he needs a pickup. And this is where we get to Part 4. But ultimately, let's talk about the legend. Again, it's a very short, straightforward story. This apparently isn't the last time we'll see the Goof Troop in this magazine have a full story. Both TaleSpin and Rescue Rangers will have mostly gag stories, which I'm not a fan of as in its entirety. I'd rather get some fun adventures. I think, really, we could almost argue this is where we see the decline of the Disney afternoon, of Disney Comics in its entirety. Because these are, in my opinion, big mistakes that they shouldn't be making. They should be continuing the comic line. But, whatever. I'm not there. Next we have Part 4, Tow for Broke. So, this story here pretty much picks off the next day. And here we see Scrooge sending Fenton to Spoonerville to figure out exactly why he's been charged for some car service. Like, no, do you know how far Spoonerville is? I don't know. Even DuckTales 2017 doesn't really talk about how far apart things are from each other. Save from the first episode when they mentioned Cape Suzette. So anyway, which is the setting for TaleSpin. So Scrooge's like, Fenton, I'm not paying whatever that is, so you best figure out what's going on. And yeah, Fenton tries to figure out. So I have a love-hate relationship with Fenton. I like him better as Gizmo Duck, which I feel is not fair to him. But he can be a bit much, especially in some of his actual episodes. I think he does take the show in a direction that it didn't need to go in. But again, I wasn't there. I was in the room. I wasn't seeing the numbers, so who knows. So anyway, while investigating the car, Fenton finds the gem. And he sort of is possessed by the gem. So that's a new feel to it. I think it feels more in line with DuckTales, that, certain magical artifacts would do that. But anyway, he grabs it, and he goes into defensive mode. So, because Fenton is the one that can command Gizmo Duck, he says the code word, and the Gizmo Duck suit comes on. He doesn't realize it's not what he wants to do. So the Gizmo Duck suit takes him over. Well, the Gizmo suit is taken over by Solar Ghost, and he kicks Fenton out, which is hilarious and scary at the same time. He's then on his way to the Money Bin, which is weird because the comic shows him going in the opposite direction. But whatever. I don't quite get that. But anyway, he breaks in, and he's trying to find the the gem, but he's also enjoying the chaos. Remember, Soligo is a god of chaos. So he's like, hey, I finally get to mess some stuff up. It's good feeling, good feeling. Also, I love the red feel to it. I can imagine sort of robotic, demonic voice coming out here. All right, what's a good comparison? Dr. Claw. Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget. Yeah, there we go. So anyway, the security guards come in, and they're not able to stop him as it goes off. So in other words, they have to figure out exactly what's going on here. And so the boys check the Book of Universal Knowledge, the Junior Witcher Guidebook, and they talk about how, in fact, the legendary god of destruction, you have to see Posters, which is the man who funded the Rankenrune Museum. And so, you know what? That's fine. That's fine. So she's like, you know what? We'll get a hold of him. And this is actually where we get a bit of fun continuity. So remember, Professor Potsert is mentioned here. That connects this story to Tailspin. So now we have to get Professor Potsert in here. And this is where we get, to me, the biggest reveal of the entire story. This is not Professor Potsert. This is his son, Bisque Potsert. So it has been about 30 years since Tailspin. Since we saw it in Tailspin. So I never thought for a moment that Tailspin took place in the past, or relative to DuckTales. Because really, for the most part, you had no reason to think so. It wouldn't be until really the Gizmo Duck era that we saw a more futuristic feel, a more modern day feel to DuckTales. And even then, it was still the mid-90s? Even then, it was still the mid-90s. So a case could be made that it wasn't really that long ago. Scrooge almost reveals that he actually did know Professor Potter's father, and they met after Scrooge found the gold setting in the coral reef. So, okay, that's cool. That's cool. And it's interesting. I think it's possibly the best bit of continuity in terms of how we tie these stories together, because we still have to find out about Soligo. And so he tells me, hey, we found the crystal, and he's like, okay, so this is bad. This is bad. He talks about how, hey, so this dude here, all right, was responsible for the decline of the city of Rankenrock for years, all right, and he finally found out about it. So Soligo was the most powerful sorcerer of the ancient world. Of course he was, all right. He conquered city after city, and his power, and he was driven by power and greed and lust, and he came to be called the Chaos God, for it was bad luck to say his name aloud. Oh my god, he was Voldemort. Okay, so anyway, a young wizard of Rankenrock named Deshane, alright, weird name, alright, he created a magical crystal with the hopes that would imprison Soligo's evil spirit. Alright, we went the Black Cauldron route. Since no prison could hide him, we sealed his evil spirit inside a red crystal. Alright, bit more phantasmic. So Deshane, engaged Soligo in combat. It was able to just pretty much, I guess, destroy his body, and then he separated the two. He separated his power into one in the crystal, one in the casing, and then encased both of them in jade. All right, and at the time, even Bisque's father said, like, you know what, something out. He sort of had a feeling he shouldn't touch it, so he always used pliers. But remember, in the Tailspin story, we saw that it got knocked off, that it was knocked away, and that's during the scruffle with Don Carnage, and that's how it ended up in Rebecca's hands, and that's ultimately led to it breaking. Okay, so, yeah, here we are, we're all up to speed. So the question is, what do we do now? Well, how do we stop him? So the question is, we have to get a hold, we have to get it back. So in other words, as long as we can get the gem and the medallion and put it back in and lock it in the vault in the money bin, it'll be totally fine. Because, nothing bad ever happens to the money bin. Anyway, well, luckily, by the time of this last era with Gizmo Duck, the money bin's pretty safe. But anyway. So we have to figure out exactly what's going on here, and turns out Scrooge sent his Cape Suzette to St. Canard for cleaning. I guess St. Canard has the best place to clean it, so he decides to make a call. He's going to send Fenton down to St. Canard to help out Gizmo Duck, because he knows Gizmo Duck's going to go to, Soligo, while possessing Gizmo Duck, is going to go there, so he's going to call Shush, and says, like, you know what, I need their best agent on this, and we're going to have to get Darkwing Duck. By the way, Scrooge and Darkwing do not respect each other. They had one crossover comic. It was hilarious. It was fun. I'm gonna see if I can find that again, because that's a fun story. So, anyway, that's the end of this one. This story is interesting because I don't think any of us quite knew where we'd go with this. I personally wouldn't have gone with a Gizmo Duck-centered story for this. I think in my mind, I would have gone for something a bit more classic. I'd have involved Magica, maybe Murloc, because while he was defeated in the DuckTales movie, remember, his first wish was to live forever. So the fall didn't kill him, but he doesn't have his medallion anymore. So really, his only superpower is, I can't die. So, yeah, weird, but okay. I don't mind Gizmo Duck in this one, primarily because Fenton doesn't do much, but neither does anyone else. So, yeah. And finally, we have the icing on the proverbial cake, Darkwing Duck. Alright, Rain and Thunder, which is a really great name for this. So, Shush headquarters gets a hold of Darkwing. It's like, you know what, Scrooge McDuck is actually personally for this here, alright? Darkwing, clearly in this continuity, has not met Scrooge yet, so this is fine. Darkwing is super excited because, like, the richest duck in the world has a job for me. Alright, Darkwing, okay, what kind of fun bonus might he slide in? He doesn't know Scrooge, there is no bonus. You could save him from getting shot, there's no bonus, alright? He'll give you a job. That's the idea of a fun little bonus. But anyway, Darkwing has his cool ideas about what he's going to do. Like, no, you need to pick up some jewelry for him. And so, yeah, the problem is, even as Fenton comes in and explains exactly what's going on here, it's too late. Soligo has already taken it, and Darkwing is coming in ready to be Darkwing, and he gets the full Darkwing treatment. Interrupted mid-monologue of, I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the blister on the pinky toe of crime. I am Darkwing. Bam! Right in the face. And love it. So now he's put it together. This is reminiscent of the DuckTales movie. I really keep mentioning that too much. When Murloc took his talisman and fused it with the lamp. And like, this is my full power, because I get unlimited wishes now. And now he's here, reptilian and whatnot. He is apparently seen as a sketch in DuckTales 2017 in the episode Let's Get Dangerous. So that's kind of cool. But anyway. So Sully goes back with some threads of fancy. Oddly enough, he's a reptile, sort of like very serpentine. And I did make a joke that he pretty much was Voldemort. This came out in 1994. Joan might have some explaining to do. But anyway. Darkwing mocks his costumes. He's like, you know what, it's alright, mine's better. And really what we see here is them just trying to keep up. And it's kind of hilarious and kind of sad at the same way. But it also makes sense. This has been a whole build-up to us seeing Soligo trying to come back, trying to get his full power, and with his full power, he's kind of unstoppable as he reigns through pure, unadulterated chaos in St. Canard. Alright, this is like if Negaduck and Quackerjack and Bushroot had a baby. Ugh. And it's just, we got scissors running through, bikes going on, wrenches breaking windows, fruit flying through the sky, cats and dogs raining in the sky, mass hysteria. It's great. Soligo even brings the two lion statues to life, which is weird because it's DuckTales and it's the Disney universe. I'm not quite sure how animals work here, like what is and isn't an animal. Chases him off. Luckily, in the scuffle, Fenton gets the Gizmo Duck suit back. But then it gets even darker as Soligo blows up Gizmo Duck, turns Launchpad into actual chopped liver, and we're just wild. We're losing it. Darkwing is just barely able to stay alive as he brings fire hydrants to life. And then, as Darkwing hides behind a satellite dish, his magic is fired back at him, and he's reduced back to the 2 gems, and yeah, so this is the actual reveal as to what happened. Alright, so when Deshane fought Soligo, alright, his shield reflected Soligo's magic and shot it back at him, and that's how he fell into 2 pieces. So that's how he lost his spirit, and he put him in the Jade Block. So, okay, cool. And so what happens now is they take the two pieces, put them in the Jade, and put it in the McDuck vault where it's never seen again, and that's how the story ends. So, yes, this is kind of awesome. So, yeah, the story is sort of lacking in some places, to be sure. It could have a bit more pump, so to speak. But ultimately, I think it is fun, it's exciting. Like I said, had we had a bit more leeway, we'd have seen all of them together. We'd have seen maybe a story happening within a span of 2 years. I think that would have worked better as opposed to a 30-year gap. But at the same time, I think the 30-year gap also works. We maybe could have gone maybe a different route with that. But maybe I'm just not committed to the 30-year gap, because then I feel like we don't keep TaleSpin in. Because we want TaleSpin in, we want Molly and Rebecca and Kit. If we go 30 years back in that time, for assume they all have the same time frame, that would mean that 30 years ago, a young Baloo and maybe a young Molly, I guess, or Shere Khan had this, and then it just sort of falls into the laps of Baloo and company, and they just, like, it could work, but I feel like it might require more than they were able to put in, because they really were sort of married to the idea that these stories could not connect any more than they already could. There was already a precedent set with Darkwing Duck, with Launchpad there, and Gizmo Duck having been there, as well as cameos from other characters from DuckTales. So, again, that leeway was there. There's probably been leeway with other characters shown in Darkwing Duck. So, realistically, they could have had all the characters come together in Darkwing Duck. But then you also have the problem with the rules of the Rescue Rangers world, because the Rescue Rangers world breaks every other bit of rule of the other two, primarily the fact that in the Rescue Rangers world there's actual humans. There aren't humans in any other story, and if they are, they're like super niche, and we never really see them more than once. So, yeah. But again, it's really fun just to see how this one little gem is able to cover through all these stories. And in essence, they're all connected. So we are almost set. We would have been set for a Disney afternoon level crisis. So, and apparently, Aaron Sparrow, who was a writer for Darkwing Duck at one point, had the idea of trying to continue the story with Solar Go coming back, and he was going to use this as a way to bring in the Gargoyles universe to it. And at that point, I said, well, okay, but the problem is we still have the human factor here, which, you know, I'm not in love with, but if we keep to the same theme of, hey, this gem just finds its way into this universe, meaning the gem is the only thing that's breaking the rules, I think that's fine. I would love to see the sort of chaos god element find its way into the world of Gargoyles. And, you know, if not for Greg Weisman, I think Aaron Sparrow would have been alright, but Aaron Sparrow wanted to write Darkwing Duck, and I don't think anyone else would have been allowed to touch Gargoyles. So, ultimately, this was fine. This was fun. I would have loved to have seen this animated. Oh, because you just, like, compress it into, 10-minute shorts? Yeah, 5-10-minute shorts. You look at an hour-long movie, and I think everybody upset, like, you know, a lot of characters don't really interact, but it would have been so cool. Oh, they could still do it! Oh my god, they could still do it. This could also be used for, like, a D17 revival, going into Darkwing Duck and Rescue Rangers. Oh, that's right, they're all there. Because if you were to take the idea that TaleSpin did happen, then you can go with the idea that Kit Cloudkicker, now older, along with Molly, do remember the story of the gem. Alright? They probably would never give it too much thought, and then you go to the Rescue Rangers. That one's tricky, because the Rescue Rangers only come into being in the episode Double O Duck. Alright, so that is weird. We would have to, like, fudge that one a bit, but we can still work it. And then, while Goofy somehow survived the events of Quack Pack, where it turns out he was magically brought in, but whatever, that can still work. We can just sort of rework this so that we can actually just reboot the entire story. Oh, this would be so cool. They're not going to do it, though. They're not going to do it. Like, in a lot of ways, I am rambling, but I have to say this. I mentioned earlier, I don't quite get why Disney does not invest in their own comic book line again. Because it's there. It's there. So currently, Dynamite is doing Darkwing Duck and Gargoyles. Now, I start reading Darkwing Duck. I might give it a look if someone has a good story idea that's happened there. But for the most part, I'm like, eh. But at the same time, DuckTales 2017 had a comic line. And no one cared. like people picked up like, hey, they've got a comic. And it was like, hey, Della's here, and it's in the past, but it doesn't really have any impact on anything else going on. And I get it. You don't want to make it so people feel they have to read this, but if you want to make it mandatory, you can make the first issue free, and then really sell it with a story. I think that would also give more wiggle room for writers to feel they can explore with other characters, as well as, again, bringing back the Disney Afternoon comic line. Like, there was a time when Disney Comics were outselling everything. Alright, so I want to know when they decided to make the decision to just not care. Alright? I don't know. So anyway, that's enough of me fanboying over this. So yeah, this is the best of everything. It was a nice love letter to yesteryear. I wish the gummy bears had been there. Like, if we could go a step further, we'd have the gummy bears, we'd have Bonkers, we'd have Gargoyles. Actually, they'd never let Bonkers be there. But anyway, so, yes. Anyway, with that in mind, this brings you to a close. If you're new to the Bucket Think Tank, please like, comment, share, subscribe. Check out some other videos, and I'll catch you all later. This is Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well. And watch out for the God of Chaos.